Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Confidence to Homeschool Podcast. Today I'm bringing that review that I promised you over the Good and the Beautiful curriculum. We have used the Good and the Beautiful for a couple of years now, and we wanted to bring you the pros and the cons of this curriculum. If you'd love to hear it, stay tuned. Welcome to the Confidence to Homeschool Podcast with me, Kelsey Shalane. I'm a lover of all things Jesus, an exceptional wife to an exceptional husband, and a homeschooling mama of 4. Together, let's trade in those insecurities and questions of if you can homeschool for the confidence that homeschooling was the right decision for you. Through simple homeschooling techniques, growth in God, and small mindset shifts, we have the power to change generations and set our kids' hearts tuned to the Lord and a love of learning. So grab your lukewarm coffee, because who gets to drink it hot anyways, and let's shave off years of that how to homeschool learning curve. Hey friends, so I wanted to jump in. We have been using the Good and the Beautiful for about the last 2 years, and not only do I have myself that's been using it, but a friend that I talked to about homeschooling, and she very first started off with the Good and the Beautiful, and so this is one of my best friends. We have really thoroughly had the conversations over what's working and what's not working in the Good and the Beautiful for her kids as well as mine. So you're going to get a couple of different inputs on it, and I'm just going to throw out there her thoughts as well. So her kids are 13, 10, and now 7, and then my daughter, who I was using the Good and the Beautiful with, is 10 as well. So our girls have kind of done curriculums together. Her and I kind of join together whenever we're choosing our curriculums for the next year, and we've just really, began to grow this tag team relationship with homeschooling, and it's been really fun. It's been really great having somebody else to bounce ideas off of. I highly recommend getting some homeschool mamas that can help you in your journey, because as I talked to a friend the other day, she was talking about the fact that we are all so concerned about, and she uses the Good and the Beautiful as well, but we're all so concerned as moms that we are going to be failing our kids, and that's a very real struggle. We are worried about what it is that we are doing right, what it is that we are doing wrong. Are we teaching them everything that they need to be taught? Are we choosing the right curriculums for them? Are there holes in the process? So on and so forth. So I say all of that to say I have some thoughts on the Good and the Beautiful after a couple of years of using it. I have things that I have absolutely loved and adored about the curriculum. Some of those being, they make it so stinking easy to use. They literally give you absolutely everything that you need. They have like a math box that comes with really cool little pieces, like if you're going to need games, or if you're going to need, like we have a 10-sided dice for our math box this year, and a ruler that pulls out, and all of the fun things. So like they give you all of those things that you need. Not only do they give you everything that you need, but also the book literally says, read to the child, and it tells you exactly what to say. So those are some of the huge pros. I absolutely love that if you are coming into homeschooling and you're starting at the beginning for the very first time, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I am not quite sure where to begin. It's really nice that the Good and the Beautiful has an open and go curriculum where you don't have to think about collecting all of the things or making sure that you have the lessons planned out, because they literally have everything for you that you're possibly going to need. as well as they're great at giving you a assessment. So you can actually go on to thegoodandthebeautiful.com and they will give you an assessment for placing your child into the different curriculums and where they are at. The one thing I really want to encourage you, and you've probably heard me say this before if you've been hanging out at the channel for a little while, please, please, please do not worry about where your child places at. If you feel like your child is quote unquote behind, you're pulling them out of school, and you feel like they're behind, it is completely okay to bring them back to where they need to be, set those foundations in place, and move on from there. So, like I said, my friend's daughter who's 13, she pulled her out of school for her I think her 7th grade year. She pulled her out. And she needed to go back to multiplication at one point. And I just told her, I was like, that's totally and completely fine. Allow that to be okay. And they went back and they only had to spend, honestly, like a week to 2 weeks on multiplication and really drilling it down. And then her daughter was able to fly through things that had been a real struggle before. The thing is about homeschooling is if you see a hole that needs to be filled in their education or whatever it may be, their curriculum, you have so many options. And the beautiful thing is you as their parent are going to get to see those things. Whereas in a classroom with 20 to 30 other kids, those things are going to be missed. And so you really get to take advantage of that one-on-one conversation with your child. And you really get to see where it is that they're struggling. And I love that about homeschooling. I'm so grateful that that is the opportunity that we have to be able to slow down and really dive into where they're struggling. So all of that to be said, The Good and the Beautiful is really wonderful for, in my opinion, those earlier grade levels. Level 2 and level 3 is where we started with The Good and the Beautiful. And whenever we started with level 2, my daughter was not the strongest reader because I've mentioned before that at one point she struggled with reading. But oh my goodness, has this girl just flown into being such an incredible reader. And I do give a lot of that to The Good and the Beautiful. They have, in 2nd grade, they have like a reading book. But for my daughter, she actually excelled with those. And both of the girls that were 10, both of the girls did not love doing them, but it was okay because they both have become such excellent readers because of them. And now it's not even a big deal. Like they just kind of just breeze through them at the beginning of the books. So I will say the Reading Booster C cards, they sucked to go through because my kid was like, I don't want to do it. And then I was like, not really an option. You're going to have to do it. And then she would finally get through it. And now she's become just an absolute incredible reader. I'm so confident in her reading skills now that it does not even concern me in the least bit. One of the other things about The Good and the Beautiful that I absolutely love is they do a lot of things to try to keep your child entertained. The books that go with their language arts, I enjoy the books. I sit there, so you do 1 chapter per lesson, and they leave you with the absolute best cliffhangers. Like, to where mom is trying to sneak in her room and finish some of the chapters to see what's going to happen next. And so it's been absolutely wonderful getting to read, and we get invested in these stories together. And I just think that that's such a fun component, to be able to be invested in a story with your child. And they do an absolutely wonderful job getting you invested in these stories. So as far as the Good and the Beautiful language arts curriculum, grade level 2 and grade level 3, those are what I'm speaking to. Those are the ones I have my personal use for. I really enjoyed them. I think that they did great for what it was that we needed at that time. Now, the cons side of it, One More Pro, they're super reasonably priced. I think it's like $67 for everything that you need on the Good and the Beautiful package for that language arts. So that's one of the beauties, is it's also super reasonably priced, and you have, like I said, everything that you need. Now, one of the cons I do feel like is we are getting into, or we've just finished up level 3. I do feel like we have missed a little bit in the areas of writing and spelling. They do pretty well with grammar. They do pretty well with, exceptionally well with getting them to read. But as it stands right now, I do feel like there has been some holes and some gaps in spelling and writing. So we are switching things up this year. I have already bought some of our curriculum for this year. We are going to be doing all about spelling this year for her, and I'm just taking her back to the basics on that. There's going to be several pages of all about spelling and several lessons that she's going to be able to just like boom, 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 rock it out and go through. And then there's going to be things like phonograms and different letters that say different things that I think are honestly going to be like oh, I didn't know that. I wish I could remember which letter it was that my friend and I were talking about the other day, because it was something that I said, what does that letter say? And there was 2 sounds that I didn't even recognize that it said. So I think that she said something along the lines of, they will break down every word in the English language to make it make sense, except for something like 14 words. There are 14 words that do not obey any of the rules, and they just are what they are, which is pretty crazy to me, because the English language is absolutely nuts. You have never realized how crazy the English language is until you've taught a human to read, because that becomes just like, what in the world are we doing here? Like, the English language is absolutely difficult. So with all of that being said, I think that there are places that the Good and the Beautiful does not quite deep dive into, and maybe they will into later lessons. But here's what we have discussed with her 13-year-old, is that the lessons just get longer and longer, especially in math. And it just becomes one of those, she doesn't want to do it. So she has definitely switched things up. She has changed into IEW for writing, and she has also switched things up. I am going to do an entire podcast on all of the other curriculums. This one is going to be plenty long enough for you and give you plenty of information about the Good and the Beautiful. So in another podcast, I'm going to kind of give you what we're doing this year, reviews on other curriculums, so on and so forth. The fun things, right? I also love that all of your work with the Good and the Beautiful is all kept in one book. If you're needing help trying to figure out how to keep track of the days that you have done school, the days you are not doing school, all of that. So if you're needing more of like an attendance record, if that's something that your state requires, you can also just write the dates at the top of the lessons, the dates that you're doing them. There are 120 lessons. You're completely capable of doing that throughout the year. As I've said before, we homeschool through the summer. So I'm kind of I've already, like I said, purchased our curriculums for next year. I'll probably start August 1st. I'll give her like July-ish off, and we'll probably do a couple of things. The crazy thing about homeschooling is you teach in the cracks of the day. Like, even if you're off of school, you're still teaching them things because you just become a teacher, and that's what you do. Like with my son, we learned all about pine nuts today, and are there parts of a pine tree that are edible, and all of the fun things. So, like I said, you just end up teaching whether you're doing school or not, because that's who you become, is a teacher. Some of the cons are, so the good and the beautiful, especially in math, I feel like it's a spiral curriculum. So what that means is they don't necessarily let you master the topic before they move on to the next topic. So it's one of those things that I feel like sometimes they move on too quickly, and then you will start to learn that they're going to come back to that. But as a parent, you almost feel like you're leaving your kid high and dry, or kind of just like on their own, and you're like, okay, we briefly covered it and here you go. Because the lessons are super short. They all are like they take about 20 to 30 minutes. And so I do sometimes feel like we have been left kind of high and dry, but a lot of times they will come back to it later and build on it later. So if you're needing more help in an area, you can always look for free worksheets online or teacherspayteachers.com. You always have options for going and making it more of a mastery program. But if you're just starting out, I would tell you just trust the process and start at the beginning and go from there. Do the assessments and then figure out where they are and just let that be okay. One of the things that was a con also for my daughter is the good and the beautiful loves using poetry, which my daughter absolutely hates. She is just not into poetry. She gets bored out of her mind with it. So they do have certain poetry things, especially in grade level 2, that they ask you to memorize. And if that is something that they are asking you to do, again, we're in homeschooling, so we get the option to do different things. So instead, I had her do like the Pledge of Allegiance as memorization, because in homeschooling, you don't necessarily have a flag hanging up in your class or in your school, and they still should learn the Pledge of Allegiance. Or you can have them memorize anything that's important to you. You can have them memorize scripture. Whatever it is that you're thinking that you would want them to know. That is the beauty of homeschooling. You can make this whatever it is that you need. And that is the exact same thing with the good and the beautiful. One more thing about English that I wish that they would have done is I wish that they would have went a little bit deeper on finding the important pieces of the story and summarizing a story, because we all know that kids okay, I took my daughter to the urgent care the other day. She said that she hurt her arm, and I took her to the urgent care. We're sitting there, we're talking to the nurse or the x-ray tech, and my daughter, she says, "You must be really tough." And my daughter says, "Yeah, I get choked out all the time." And I said, "Addison, you have to add the fact that you do jujitsu to that. You can't just tell her that you get choked out all of the time and not add the fact that that's because of jujitsu and like mom's not home choking you out on a regular basis." Or she told my mother the other day that I leave my 1-year-old in the bathtub all the time by himself. Like I walk away from him. And I looked at her and I was like, "Did you tell her that your 6-year-old brother is also in the bathtub with him?" And I walked across the hallway to the room to go grab him a diaper, because that matters. that matters. I did not just leave my 1-year-old unattended for 10 minutes in the bathtub by himself, which is exactly what you made it sound like. So I think that also correlates with summarizing in stories. So I think that is something that is learned that I do wish that they would have went a little bit deeper on, and I am hoping to hit a little bit more on this year. So that is my review on the good and the beautiful language arts. To recap that, I think they do an absolute wonderful job with reading. I think that they do great for setting the parent up for success. And I think that if there is any places that they are lacking, there is definitely a possibility for you to supplement if that is something that you want to do. But again, I highly encourage you, if you are just starting out and this is your very first year in homeschooling, just let this year be fun. And I promise you, as the years go, you are going to feel more capable of picking out their curriculums and piecing their curriculums together, and you're going to understand what your child needs a little bit more, and you're going to feel more confident as you go, because confidence isn't something that you just show up with at the beginning. It's something that you gain as you continue to work through the process. And I think that this is a really great spot to start working through the process, is just to choose, have an open book curriculum, agree with the assessment, go ahead and do the assessment, and begin there. Start where they tell you to start, and you can adjust as we go. So there's not a right or a wrong with homeschooling. There's just adjustments and learning and making it better. As I have said before, I beg of you that if you are going to choose homeschooling, stick with it for 2 to 3 years. 3 years is really when you're going to start feeling confident. Going into year 3 is whenever you're really going to start feeling like, okay, I think I may have this figured out. And you're going to continue to learn from there, because each kid is different and you'll have to make adjustments as you go. But it's totally fine, especially when you're starting out with your littles. So that is my review for the good and the beautiful language arts. And I hope that it was helpful, and I hope that you have decided whether this is a good curriculum for you or not. And in the next episode, I'm going to give you some other options for language arts if that is just not your jam. So I hope you have the very best day. Thanks for listening. Hey friend, thanks again for joining me today on your journey to the confidence to homeschool. I hope this podcast blessed you with one more tool of success. If it did, please scroll down to the bottom of your screen and leave me a review. Share it with a friend. Just remember, confidence in anything takes practice, so let's grow.